Okay, we are officially recording. It's all yours, Donna.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Tips for Improving Your Public Speaking Instantly. I woke up so excited this morning to introduce you to Kevin Elliott, who has become a dear friend of ours over the last several years. If you have not seen Kevin's FHWA videos on centerline rumble strips, he makes them much more engaging and exciting than anyone I've ever seen. He has so many credentials. You can see them on the screen, but I will say that what I've been most impressed about is his wanting to work closely with our LTAP community in all of our states to improve our skills in marketing safety and marketing our programs. So today, I really think that in this hour that we have with them, you're definitely going to walk away with some skills that you can implement right away. So take it away, Kevin.
Well, thank you, Donna. And before I share my screen and jump into all that, just as I know some of you, I love the LTAP people for a very personal reason, is because I'm from a relatively rural county. I live in Florida, but I live in North Florida. And if you know anything about Florida, North Florida is the other Florida. It's the spot most people don't know about. It's very rural. I live in Bay County, Florida. There's 130,000 people in the whole county. So I just love local agencies, and I do a lot of work with FHWA and others. So, but the locals are very near and dear to me because you all are working with people who have to answer for their work in a very real way. Like the people will walk up to them in the grocery store and say, "Hey, what are you doing about this?" And I like that, frankly. I like that very close to your constituency. So I love the LTAP, and I appreciate all of you showing up. I'm bowled over at the attendance. Thank you very much. Like Donna said, I'm a marketing communication specialist, so I do this kind of thing for a living, but I also teach it. I'm a college teacher. I'm an adjunct professor. I teach public speaking and communication type classes. And so I try every day to live down that terrible saying that those who can't do teach, because I do and I teach. And so that's why I'm here. It's one of I love to teach these things that I do every day with folks like you. I've worked in the transportation industry now for about 5 years and had to learn all that stuff, learn what rumble strips even were, what those were called, that kind of thing. And so thank you all for showing up this morning. The other thing that just before I jump into my presentation itself, is public speaking is probably my favorite thing of all to teach, because one, it's probably the most valuable single skill that you can have in your career or your life. If you learn how to speak in front of people, you become more valuable to others in lots of ways instantly. The other thing that I like to teach is because most people are super duper scared to do it. They don't want to do it. And a lot of you are probably freaking out even virtually, thinking that you would have to do this kind of thing. So you have a situation where most people are scared to do it, but if you learn how to do it, you have this incredibly valuable skill that you can use in your life and in your job. So that's a huge opportunity to me. I see, hey, it's a supply and demand thing. The supply of good speakers is low, the demand is very high. So learn a few skills, get better, and you have a very tangible value that you can walk away with. And so it's why I love teaching it. I've done this kind of thing and speaking in public for 20 years, and in lots of different situations, virtually now, more than I do in person more than anything, but virtually since for the last few months, obviously. As Regina mentioned, if you have questions as we go along, just start filling up the chat pod. I can roll with it, and if I like my sessions to be very loose and very interactive, so if you have a question and Regina feels like she needs to have me answer that right away, that's fine. Don't feel bad about interrupting me. I can jump right back on and no trouble at all. But before we do that, I want to do a little informal poll at the very beginning of this to gauge my audience a little bit, to see. I could normally do this with a show of hands, but Regina, would you go ahead and launch that little poll we're going to do, please? Take a minute, please, and answer this one question, and let me know where you are in life with your public speaking skills. So number one, total pro. I got this in the bag. I could teach this webinar. I don't even know why I'm here. Number 2, pretty good, but a little bit rusty. Number 3 is I don't love it, but I can do it if I have to, if you force me. Or the number 4 is only if you force me. And then number 5 is this is my worst nightmare. I'd rather wrestle a porcupine. I can't even think about this. So let me know where you are.
We're almost there. Just a few more people answering. Then I'll
Okay.
launch.
Yeah. So David asked me, I saw the chat, am I the Rumble Strips guy? Yes, I was in that video. I wrote it and produced it. And I tell people I was in it because I was a budget friendly option. I couldn't afford an actor. So that's just what you got. And I have to keep my wrestling and stuff like that under my accent under control for larger group meetings.
All right. I think we've got a good 88% have voted. So
Okay.
we're going to go ahead and launch.
Okay. So we have our bell curve, right? There it is. Most of you can do this. Most of you don't love it. That's a pretty normal response. But if I had to get up there and talk about it, I can. Good. Okay, thank you. So we can improve. And the goal today is to give you some very practical tips to help you improve instantly, just like the title says. And I mean to, truth in advertising, I want to make sure and give you those. So I'm going to share my screen and jump into this. Okay. There's me. You've heard enough about me. I live in Panama City, Florida. Those of you who know what that is will know what that is. Come down and see us when the weather's nicer. It's too hot right now. All right, why are we here? I'm all about the practical takeaway. Theory is super important, and I'm going to give you some of that, some theory behind public speaking, why you're afraid of it, which is the first thing you're going to learn. Why are we so scared universally as human beings? Because this is not a regional thing. It's not a male versus female. It's not this is a universal human fear, to include me. I'm nervous right now. Everybody is nervous to do this. So I want to explain why that is. But then I want to give you some very common mistakes that people make. Even, in my opinion, even very accomplished, very famous public speakers, I think they make some mistakes that I want to show you and hopefully teach you better. And then 3 practical tips to improve instantly, because I want you to have something that you can turn around and start using right away. Easy stuff, things that are not, you don't have to be a college teacher or something like that to practice. So that's why you're here. Those are the 3 things that I'm going to give you. So let's start with this fear. You scared? Why are you so scared to speak in public? Because even those of you who are rusty but can do it, let's be honest, it freaks us out. And on a very deep level, and it's kind of weird how deeply public speaking freaks us out. And so I think it's worth digging into a little bit. Why are we so scared of this simple activity? Because it's just doing what we do all the time. We talk to each other all the time. Why, when I say, okay, you're going to stand up in front of a group and deliver words, why does that change in our brain? And it does. It changes physically in our brain, in our body, what happens. So let's talk a little bit about why you're so scared of this. This picture, this painting you're looking at right now, is a good picture of most of human history. Zoom calls and cell phones and electric light and all of the things that the internet are obviously very, very, very recent innovations in human history. Most of our time on Earth was spent like this, in little hunter-gatherer communities, small little tribes, for lack of a better word, small family groups of 25 to 30 people who were just trying to make it. And everybody did something. People hunted, some people gathered. This is where we learned how to farm, but this is mostly where we learned community and how to depend on each other. Because here's the thing, in this world, At this point in our history, we were not at the top of the food chain by any means, and our survival was not guaranteed. COVID is a threat to us right now, and it is a deadly threat, no doubt about it. But if you go back to this time, the average life expectancy was about 30 years old at max, because everything wanted to kill us. It was a dangerous place to be. Okay, so thinking like that, if I'm part of this group and thinking what humans have to offer to the world, so we don't have armor, we don't have any real great natural defenses, we don't have good claws, we don't even have a decent coat of fur, we don't have fangs, we don't have any of the things that other creatures have to defend themselves. So in this world, all we had were each other. We had our big brains, we had words, we had language, because we're the only ones that can articulate at this level. We had our brains, we had our words, and we had each other. We had the group. That's it. So if you think about this, in this world where our brains were developing, where our prefrontal cortex, our most recent part of our brain developed, was in this world. In that time, what would happen to you if you were rejected by the group? What happened if you were to offend the group and they kicked you out? Well, this would happen. You were left to your own defenses. In a very real way, it was a death sentence to be rejected from the group in this world. And while all of our modern society has developed, and we know we're not on the Serengeti plain anymore, and we know that if a group rejects us, we are not going to die, and we know that there's not a saber-toothed tiger that's going to kill us. We know that in part of our brain. But the deep, deep part of our brain that developed out there in that hunter-gatherer time thinks if I'm rejected by the group, I will die.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes.
So there is actually a lot of comments regarding this. Like Lisa saying she's afraid of being judged. Delia saying she speaks softly, so she's always worried people can't hear her. And other people again saying they're afraid of being judged, fear that they don't know what they're talking about, what they're talking about, or losing their train of thought. So a lot of it is like kind of just fear of how they're going to be interpreted by others.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kevin. I accidentally muted you, not me.
Am I back?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Excellent comments. Every single one of those strikes at the same issue that I'm going to address in just a minute. It strikes at incompetence. You feel, and we articulate it in lots of ways. I feel like I'm not going to know what to say. They're going to judge me. I will forget what I'm going to say. I will sound like I am incompetent. That is the core, deep fear of public speaking. And our brains, you couple that fear with this deep part of our brain that thinks, if this group in front of me rejects me, if they don't see my value, if they find me incompetent, if they don't see that I bring something to the group, they will kick me out and I will die. Now, when I say those words, we all go, oh, I know that's not true. But tell that to the deep emotional part of your brain. It doesn't know the difference. It thinks that you will really die. So that's why when you are speaking in public or thinking about speaking in public, you have this very scary response, right? Public speaking is frightening to people because your brain thinks that saber-toothed tiger is coming to get you. That's why. So our brains do this correlation between incompetence and death. What an extreme reaction. Isn't that strange? But it's true. So here are the tips that I'm going to discuss, and then I'm going to explain a little bit more of the physiological reaction that you have. What we just described, all the things you said. I feel incompetent. I feel like they're going to reject me. I speak quietly, and I need to make sure that my voice projects. I don't feel confident enough to project my voice. All of those things strike at the same single fear. So if we can help you with that a little bit, you will instantly be better at speaking in public. Here are some tips the 3 that I'm going to give you, and I'm going to preview them now. The first one is to over-prepare. I'll explain in a minute what I mean by that, what that looks like, and why that's a big deal. Stand still. Now, in this situation, I don't have a choice. I'm sitting in a chair, we have to stand still. But when we all go back to speaking in public in front of live human beings, I want to explain why standing still or standing in one spot is such a big deal. And that's a little bit controversial among public speaking teachers. If any of you have ever done Toastmasters or anything, they teach you differently than this. And so just fair warning, I have a different view of that. And the last one is lose your notes. This is one where my students fight me the most, because we all want those notes in front of us. We think those index cards or bullet points or whatever, we think that's going to help us. I'm here to tell you that it will not help you, and there is a better way to do it. So those are my 3. Let's jump right into the very first one, over preparing. I told you about the physiological response that you have to speaking in public. It's a deep fear, and you feel like you're going to die. Or take that back. You feel like you are in a life-threatening situation. If you remember your Psychology 101 class or biology class or whatever, they taught you if you remember, the fight or flight reflex. We all know this. It's when adrenaline starts to pump out of your heart or into your heart and down into your hands get shaky, your mouth gets dry. You get lightheaded, you get short of breath, your nostrils flare, your pupils dilate. Also, your hearing gets more sensitive, if you didn't know that. Fight or flight is preparing you for a life-threatening situation. When we are faced with having to speak in front of people, we have exactly the same response for the reasons I just mentioned. Blood goes to your extremities, to your hands and to your feet, because your body thinks, I have to either fight my way out of this or run away from this life-threatening situation. The thing about the body is that it has to get energy from somewhere. There's only so much energy in your body at any one time. So if it's sending energy to your extremities, it's taking it away from somewhere else. And where is it taking it away from? It's taking it away from the organ that it actually doesn't need when you're in a fight, and that's your brain. It pulls blood out of your brain. So why do you feel lightheaded when you feel like you have to speak when you get the fight or flight? Because the blood is leaving your brain. Here's another thing, is remember, the last part of our brains to evolve is the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is where the words live. That's where language is. If you pull the blood out of the language center of your brain, that's why when you stand up in front of people, you forget what you want to say. You'll forget your name sometimes for a few minutes because the blood has left the center of your brain where all the words are. So I'll have students say to me, man, I prepared. I did this last night in my room and it was awesome. I remembered everything. And when I stood up, I forgot what I wanted to say. It's one of the deepest fears of public speaking. This is why, because the blood is leaving your brain and going to your extremities. So the question is, what do we do about that? How on earth can I get over that? Well, look at this kitty cat. This is how you're going to get over that response, because you can. You can overcome that fight or flight reflex. When I have a room full of people in person or students, I always ask, okay, who are the cat people and the dog people? And we know they're always in two kind of camps. And sometimes there's some blending, but they're cat people and dog people. Or there are parents in the room, I say, okay, parent, how many parents do I have in the room? And I run this little mental exercise. And this strikes right at the idea of incompetence, which is right at the heart of this fear. For those of you who are cat people, if you're not a cat person, if you're a dog person, if you're a gecko person, whatever, if you have a favorite pet or your child, if I were to ask you, and I won't make you do this, but if I were to ask you right now to come on the line and talk without any notes or any preparation to talk about your cat, could you do it? I think the answer is yeah. You'd be nervous, but could you do it? Could you talk about a favorite pet? Could you talk about one of your kids? Could you talk about a favorite vacation spot, a favorite book, a movie, a restaurant? Without any prompting, without any notes, you could do it. Now, you may fumble a little bit, you might be nervous, but you could do it. So ask yourself, can you talk about your cat? The reason why you can talk about your cat or your child or your favorite restaurant without any notice, without any notes, without all of those things is because you know that topic so well that you almost cannot forget it. So the bottom line is you must be incredibly competent at your topic, whatever the topic is. You have to over-prepare. Now, in the case of a pet, you have prepared by getting to know that pet, spending time with it, having experiences with that pet. So now you have this entire knowledge base, this super deep experience with this topic, and so you can talk about it at a moment's notice. The logic follows that any topic you are going to speak about in public, you must get that familiar with. So it's not good enough to get a glancing knowledge of it. It's not good enough to just read some talking points about it or know a little bit about it. You have to know it so deeply. Just like you do a favorite pet, just like you do your child. You have to know it that much. And if you do, you will instantly be more competent. And then that will absolutely build your confidence slowly over time, but you can do it. So the number one thing is to prepare. The more you prepare, the more competent you will feel. It will be deep in your hard drive. You will instantly be better at speaking. The second one is to stand still. Now, this is more for when we're back in public and speaking in front of live people. Why? You've heard public speaking teachers teach you, okay, so you should wander back and forth in front of the room. You should like move from side to side. This engages people more. This makes them listen to you. This keeps them from being bored. I'm here to tell you that that is a myth, at least the way that I teach it. And there are people who disagree with me. When I teach this webinar before, I've had people send me notes afterwards and say, you are wrong about that. Fine, that is totally legitimate if you think that. I don't. I think wandering back and forth does the opposite of what you think it's going to do. And here's why. We've all been in a public speaking situation where the speaker is dynamic and talking and will start on one side of the room and wander over here and talk to this side of the room and come back across the stage and talk to that, or come back across the room and talk to that one. Now let me ask you this. What did you think when that speaker was coming at you? When that speaker locked eyes with you and is walking towards you, and you saw something like this, you saw this guy coming at you. Now, let me ask you this. Were you paying attention to what he was saying at that moment? Were you thinking, oh, this is so good, I have to take notes? No, you weren't thinking that. What you were thinking was, oh my gosh, is he going to ask me a question? Is he going to call me out in front of everybody? Is he going to make me look incompetent? That's what you were thinking. And if you were thinking that, by definition, you were not thinking about the presentation, which is the entire point. The entire point is to make people feel comfortable so they can let their brain rest and listen to what you are saying. It's a myth. So if I'm speaking to you and I walk up to you and I look you in the eyes, you're going to look me back in the eyes. That's a predator response. You're going to have to look back at me, but it doesn't mean you're paying attention to what I'm saying. It means you're worried that I'm going to threaten you. The other problem with the going back and forth is this. So when I turn around, I'm going to go to the other side of the room, and this is what you're going to see. Now, eye contact, and excuse my COVID haircut. You notice it's a little bit shaggy back there. There it is. You see the back of my head. Eye contact is the most important thing that you have as a public speaker. It's one of the things that I miss the most about doing virtual webinars. I can't see your eyeballs. I can't see your faces. But if I turn my back to you, no matter what I'm saying, you're not paying attention because you can't hear me. I'm talking to the other side of the room, and your brain will tell you, oh, this is not for me. Those are the opposite of the objectives of a good public speech. The idea is to keep people engaged and have them listening and absorbing what you're saying. If you're not doing that, you are failing as a public speaker, even if you think they were listening to you because they were looking at you. Looking at me is not the same as listening to me. Parents in the room will absolutely verify that. A child can be looking at you and be completely ignoring you. So how do you position yourself in a room? When we're back in rooms and live audiences, here's how. This is you. This is your audience, and position yourself off to one side like this. That is your visual aid. Unless it is absolutely prohibited, you should always have a visual aid. And I'm gonna show you that and why that's so important in just a moment. Position yourself so that you make this little triangle. You're off to one side. Notice your audience can see you without turning their head. They can glance over and see you, but they can also look straight forward and see your visual aid. Now, you're not blocking the visual aid. You're not distracting from it, and it's not distracting from you. We've all had those situations where somebody walks in front of a projector and they get the presentation on their face. It's completely distracting. Stand off to one side. This way, the entire audience can take in the whole scene at one glance. Visual aid as a support, you the center of attention, the public speaker, and now everybody feels comfortable, and stand in that spot. Don't wander around, because now they can they go, okay, the person's not going to come after me, and they can relax. You will physically watch them relax in the first couple of minutes if they know this is the configuration. So if you're right-handed, like I am, stand off to that side, like the screen is. If you are left-handed, stand on the other side. And there's a very practical reason for that. It's because when we get nervous and we speak in public, you are going to gesture with your dominant hand. If you're going to point at the visual aid, you are, whether you know you are or not, you are going to use your dominant hand. I'm right-handed. So when I stand over there, if I gesture with my right hand, I open my body to the crowd, which is what you want. If I gesture with my left hand and I put my hand across my body, now I'm closing off my audience. So that's a little body language tip for you, is always keep the front of your body square and open to your audience. So right-handers, you stand on that side, left-handers stand on the other side. Here's what it looks like when I do it. There I am, there's my visual aid, there's my crowd. There's, I freestyled, I'm on the left side, living on the edge. This is true even if you're using a little flip chart like this. There's me, there's my visual aid, there's my crowd. Me, visual aid, crowd. Me, visual aid, crowd. Set yourself up that way. And it's not just me saying this whole idea of picking a spot and standing there. We've all heard of TED Talks, right? TED Talks are probably the most famous public speaking venue in the world right now. TED trains their speakers to do exactly what I just told you. As a matter of fact, they give them a big red dot to stand in, a big bullseye right there. So that they have to stand in that spot. Notice the woman at the bottom has a visual aid. Notice how she's configured. She's standing in the spot, visual aid off to her right shoulder, audience in front of her. Don't move around too much. This is how you do it. This is how the pros do it. This is the way to actually let your audience pay attention to what you're saying. If you want to send me any disagreeing emails, absolutely do, because I love this conversation. But I know some folks are trained differently, but that's the logic behind this approach. Okay, third one. So the first one is to over-prepare. You want to know your topic as well as you know your favorite pet or your favorite hobby. You want to stand still, position yourself so you are in that triangle and everybody can pay attention and see you and your visual aid. The third one is to lose your notes. This is where I get serious pushback, because I know those notes are a security blanket for you. I understand, I get it. And I don't let my students use them, and they hate it until they do it one time, the right time. The best kind of public speaking is called extemporaneous speaking. There is scripted speaking where you memorize a script. There is manuscript speaking where you read a manuscript, the worst possible kind of public speaking. And there is extemporaneous speaking. Extemporaneous speaking is where, like I'm doing right now. So I don't have any written notes in front of me. I'm not holding up anything. I'm just talking to you about something that I know very, very well, which is why point number one is so important, to over-prepare. Because what it lets you do is talk conversationally about this topic without needing a million notes. It also lets you take questions from the field. That's a big fear about public speaking. Somebody's going to ask me a question I don't know the answer to. Well, if you over prepare, about 99% of the time, you are going to know the answer and you can answer on the fly. That's how conversational public speaking happens. It happens by over preparing. But if you don't over prepare, you have to use notes as a crutch. That's a mistake.
Hey, Kevin.
So what do you do? Yes, go ahead.
So there's some good questions regarding, like, how do you handle writing on a flip chart and still maintain audience contact?
Great question. Great question. So here's what I do.
Oh, I just did it again. I just unmuted you now.
All right, am I back? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Super question about flip charts. Good one. Most of my presentations, to include this one, only have about 3 points. Okay, that's for a number of reasons. One is to keep things succinct, because people are just going to lose me if I have 9 points, right? 3 points is also a good bite-sized chunk for me to prepare in a short period of time, to deliver in a short period of time. If I have a flip chart, what I do is I write my 3 points on the flip chart at the very beginning of my talk. I used to try and do it like, okay, I'll write point number 1 when I am speaking to point number 1 and point number 2. But then sometimes, again, I get nervous too and I forget, and I'll stumble on point 2 and I go, oh, shoot, what was that? So I write all 3 points on the flip chart. And that way, if I never go back to the flip chart, at least they have my outline up there and I can refer back to it. Now, if you are going to write on the flip chart and draw, you are going to have to turn your body and write on it. That's okay. But what you can do as you practice is you write the thing you want to write, and then make sure you turn your body back to your audience. So write and you're talking to them while you're writing, and then you turn your audience back to your audience so you can bring them back in with your eyes and with your body language. Great question. When I tell people to lose the notes, they say, what if I forget something? And we know that happens because I just explained why. What if I forget something? Well, remember your cat? Remember that little exercise? If you can talk about something that you know so well, that way, even if you forget a little something, and by the way, it happens. It happens. But I'm going to explain what to do if you do forget something. Remember I said you are not allowed to have notes. That's mostly true. You're not allowed to have written notes sitting in front of you. But look at our kitty cat right here. And if I were to ask you, if we were in a live audience, I would ask you, what was the story behind that cat? What was I talking about? If you look at that cat, what do you think of? And my guess is you're going to think of, oh, I should know my topic well enough to be familiar with it. In other words, why do I say to always have a visual aid? Because there are your notes. You don't need a bunch of written notes. You need simple visual prompts that will remind you of the things that you over-prepared. And if you did your job over-preparing, all you need are little visual prompts. And I've been using notes, and you didn't even maybe know it, all through my presentation. Here are my notes. And so all I need are these prompts. And I go, oh, I'm talking about me walking across the stage. Oh, I'm talking about the saber-toothed tiger, the fear of public speaking. Oh, I'm talking about the kid. Oh yeah, you have to be familiar with your topic. There are your notes. So if you make a highly visual aid and use it and then over prepare, now you have everything you need to not forget the major parts of your talk. When it comes to a flip chart, you have to write those out, granted. But you can write your prompts, write your 3 little bullets right there. And then if you have to, because you're positioned yourself so you're not blocking the audience from your visual aid or your body language, you can turn quickly, you look back at your visual aid, get your prompt, and then right back into your public speaking. So that's the answer to written notes and cue cards and all that stuff. But some of you are out there and you're asking, no, seriously, Kevin, what if I forget something? It's freaking me out if I forget what to say. Fair enough. Here's what you do, because it happens. The first thing is to pause. Simply stop what you are doing. It's okay. Your audience will not fault you. If you forget something and you need to pause, take a pause, say these words, just a moment. Okay. Take a pause, say just a moment, take a deep breath. Because in that moment, you're starting to panic. Again, fight or flight. Your brain needs oxygen very badly at that moment. So take a deep breath, and you can take the time. It's going to feel like eternity, but trust me, it will only be a few seconds. Your audience will not mind. And then look at your slide. Take a deep breath, look at your slide, and that prompt you have up there on the slide will bring the words back. I've seen it happen hundreds of times. I have taught hundreds of students. I've taught people all across the country. You think you're going to stand there and forget everything you ever did. It will come back. Here's what you do not do. You don't apologize. Oh man, I prepared this so hard, and last night, I don't know what happened. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That will not help. It won't help you, and it won't help your audience. Your audience will feel awkward for you at that point. Yeah, that's not your job. Remember, you're in charge of this moment. So don't apologize. And they're not expecting you to apologize, by the way. And don't tell us what you forgot, because only you know. What if I told you that I forgot something on my last 2 slides? Would you have known if you won't know. It's in your head, not our head. So there's no need for you to stand up there and go, oh shoot, I forgot this whole thing. I was going to tell this story. Don't tell us that. We don't need to know. You just keep moving on. Do those things. And I promise you will make it through that presentation and you will be better for it. But here's what it looks like. I want to give you an example of the worst case scenario. Here's what happens when it looks like when you don't prepare, when you do not use good visual aids, and when you don't do those practical things I told you. This is Michael Bay. And Regina, if you'll get that video ready here just a second, I have a 1-minute video I want to show you. This is Michael Bay. He's a very famous movie director. He directed Transformers and Pearl Harbor and all kinds of big blockbuster movies. Michael Bay was invited to the CNET conference, which is the largest technology conference in the country. Samsung invited him to pitch at Cool Curve TV. And the event was to have Michael Bay come and talk about Michael Bay. Basically talk about directing his videos and what that's like. And now, if Michael Bay had one topic on earth that he should be able to talk about easily, it should be Michael Bay, right? Right. But it doesn't go down like that. And I'm going to explain the backstory on this video. It's awkward and it's painful to watch. And I feel bad for him that this happened. But I show this to students and I show this in webinars to show what happens when you don't follow the tips that I just gave you. So let's watch this video, what happens to Michael Bay. It's on about 1 minute long. And then I want to come back and explain the backstory here and then tie it back in with this presentation. So Regina, whenever you're ready, please. Do we have the audio on?
Hold on. Let me see.
There's a setting, I think, in when you share, there should be some audio controls in the. And if not, no big deal.
As a director, I try to.
There you go. Okay, let's watch this.
Do you hear it?
I could, yep, go ahead.
Director and producer, Michael Bay. Good afternoon.
Thanks, Joe.
Good afternoon, Michael.
How is everyone today?
Are you hearing it?
My job as
Yes.
a director is I get to dream for a living.
Michael, you know, you're known for such unbelievable action. What inspires you? How do you come up with these unbelievable ideas?
I create visual worlds that are so beyond everyone's normal life experiences. And Hollywood is a place that creates a viewer escape. And what I try to do is, as a director, I try to... the type is all off, sorry, but I'll just wing this.
Tell us what you think.
Yeah, we'll wing it right now. I try to take people on an emotional ride, and
the curve? How does it? How do you think it's going to impact how viewers experience your movies?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank
Okay.
Michael Bay for joining us.
Okay, so that's painful to watch, of course. That's everybody's worst nightmare, that you're going to have that happen. Here's the backstory, is that Michael Bay was invited to do this, and he was supposed to have what he was going to say, a script of what he was going to say, on a teleprompter down at the floor. And if you watch that video back, you'll see him looking down at the floor, looking down at the front of the stage. He's looking for his teleprompter. The teleprompter broke when he got on stage. It froze. And so when you hear him say, oh, the words are off, or we'll just wing it. What happened there was a classic mistake, is he did not speak from what he knew. He was relying on a script to talk about himself, which seems odd to me. In other words, he didn't prepare for an extemporaneous presentation. He thought to himself, oh, I'm going to have that script down there. I don't need to worry about it. I can just read through that script. But what happens when the script breaks? If you haven't prepared for that moment, that's what happens. So if you can get that, if you can over prepare, have simple visual aids, even if your visual aids go away, you can still talk through it. You can still manage. And if you do those practical tips, you can see him panicking. You can see him freaking out, and he leaves the stage instead of saying, you know what, one moment, let me gather myself, take a deep breath. The host was trying to bring him out and trying to talk him through it, but he didn't take the moment, take a deep breath, get back together and say, I'm just talking about myself. I can handle this. He would have made it through. So the tips I just gave you will help you avoid that moment right there, which is really what we're worried about, right? This is our biggest fear. I have taught hundreds of students, and I have never, ever had one do that. I promise. They have never done that. If you'll follow these tips, you will do better than that. So in review, and I want to have some Q&A here at the end, these are the tips. Over prepare. Study that topic until you know it just like you know your favorite pet or your favorite restaurant. Practice talking about it with people, talking without notes. When you stand in front of a group, a group, position yourself the way that I just showed you, and you will be more successful. Your audience will be more engaged. They will pay attention more. They will have a more satisfying experience because they won't feel like they have been threatened or they have been made to feel uncomfortable. And lose your notes. No cue cards, no Post-it notes, no paper in front of you. Use those simple visual aids. But then, even if your PowerPoint messes up, you've over-prepared, remember? You've over-prepared. You can still talk about this topic in an extemporaneous way. And that way, you can answer questions like I'm about to do. You can open it up. You can be more comfortable. You will simply be able to overcome this deep-seated natural fear that we all have, that I have, that everybody has. You can overcome it, that fear of looking incompetent, by becoming competent. And then at that point, it's just a matter of practice. Like anything, like riding a bike or being an engineer or doing anything, you have the core skills. Now you just need to start doing it over and over and over again. And I guarantee you will get better. I have students and people that I do in webinars practice these tips, go into their careers, and then will message me back and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. They asked me to speak at this next conference. My boss loves me. I've had students message me 15 minutes before they stand up in front of a conference in Nashville and say, thank you so much. I learned, I'm actually doing this, and they're flying me around the country and asking me to speak, and it's great. So these are things that I know will work. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in lots and lots of other people. And I know it can help you too. So what I'd like to do at this point is, if you do these things, you will instantly be better. And I mean that. I don't mean like, I'm not exaggerating. Do these things, you will improve instantly, and you will only get better as you do it more often. And so close with our hopefully our saber-toothed tiger is not as scary as he once was. What I want to do is ask Regina to do our poll again. So based on this, what you just learned, just a knee-jerk kind of reaction to what you just learned, let's do our poll again. Regina, would you put it up again, please? And I want to see if we move the needle at all. Take a minute and please fill it out.
And we do have some questions in the queue too, when
Good.
you're ready.
Yeah, as soon as we do the, while people are doing the poll, I can go ahead and answer one if you want, Regina.
Okay, this is a pretty easy one. How do you break the ums and ah habit?
Yes. Okay. Great question. In my public speaking teaching, I have three kinds of public speakers. I have ummers, I have you-knowers, and I have likers. My 19-year-old daughter is a liker, like this and like that, and we like went to this and we like did this and we like did that, and it's just, as a public speaking teacher, it just hurts my ears. But that's how she speaks. The only way to do that is practice. Here's what I tell students to do. One, like any 12-step program, you have to admit that you have a problem. You have to know. So you're going to have to see yourself recorded. You're going to have to see what it sounds like. Ask someone to record your next public speaking event. It's painful. It's scary. I know, but this is the only way you're going to get better. And then you will instantly know if you're an ummer, a liker, or a you-knower. Once you learn that, the next time you speak in public, understand, okay, that's what I am. And here's what you have to do. It's going to feel a little bit weird. As you go through your speech, speak a little bit more slowly, and in your brain think, okay, I need to notice every time I say You'll start to notice it. When you start to feel the come on, pause. And then start speaking again. When you feel it the next time, pause, literally pause in the middle of your sentence and start speaking without saying It's awkward and stilted at first. There's no other way to get better at it though. But the good news is, after a couple of times doing that, your brain will start to rewire itself, and so will your speech patterns. I promise. I've had students over a semester will start off horrible, like liking and you-knowing, and just by the time they get done, and then their next speech, I'll make them stop every time they say, or stop, and by the third time, they're getting better. By the fourth time, by the end of the semester, it's almost completely gone. Great question.
Are you ready to launch?
Yeah, let's see what the poll says. So I think we gained a couple of percentage points and pretty good. I think, maybe. Good. But look, we had 6% last time say it was their worst nightmare. Now it's 0. We're moving the needle. We're moving them away from deathly fear to just fearful. Good. Well, thank you all for responding to that. I appreciate it. And now we have about 9 minutes left. So I'm open to any questions you have. Regina?
Any tips on speaking to a group through Zoom or virtual platform where there is no eye contact and it's harder to look around the room and see if people are following along with what you're saying? I find myself having a hard time not getting the confirmation of seeing people nod along.
You are not alone. Here's the deal. This is our new reality this is the part of our new reality I dislike a lot. The scholars disagree, but somewhere between 70 and 90% of human communication is nonverbal, is not the words. It's everything else. It's eye contact, it's tone of voice, it's body language. And that is crucial information for public speakers, because when I can tell in a glance if my audience understood what I just said, or if they disagree, or if I need to slow down, or if I need to speed up. I don't have any of that. And so I struggle with that too. What I have to do, well, in small groups, it's doable. And as we know, if you can fit 10 or 12 people on a screen and everybody's sharing your screen, you can, like my classes are pretty small. I think I have 12 this semester. I put them all on screen and I can see them, and I can replicate that experience. In this situation, there's 130 people here. I can't do it. It's a handicap. I don't know, frankly, a good fix. The only thing I can do, because I have done this presentation so many times and taught this, I know it so well. I have over prepared. I know where people tend to get slowed down and messed up. and then I just imagine those things happening in a virtual group and try to anticipate them. And that's the best I can do, or anybody can do. There is no good fix for this, except, again, to over-prepare. And that's why I try to allow a lot of time for questions. So if I did miss something, if I simply didn't do a good job on something, you all can tell me.
Okay. How do you know if you're speaking loud enough, and how do I use the microphone correctly? Fear of being too close to it or not being picked up by it at all. So
I usually go on the other side. I talk too loud. You've asked my wife and daughters, they will tell you, Kevin, you simply talk too loud. I was in theater and in band in high school, and they taught me how to project my voice, how to breathe from my diaphragm, and I just do. I talk loud. So I'm always afraid that I'm coming on too strong on the microphone. The only way to do that, and for those of you who are more soft-spoken, the same is true, that you can't be heard. The only way to know is ask. In a virtual environment, you simply have to ask, am I too loud? Am I too quiet? Am I coming on am I doing fine? And take that feedback. That's the only way to know. In a live room, if they give you a microphone or something like that, you can ask, how do I sound? Am I good? Take care of those things at the very beginning. It's okay to think of it as housekeeping, and they'll tell you, yep, coming in loud and clear here in the back row, or no, turn it up, or whatever. Get all those little adjustments done early on, and then that lets you move on in your brain. So simply ask people, am I too loud? And the answer for me is usually, yeah. Can you tone it down some? Your mouth is too big.
all right, and then we have hard to strike the balance between too much on the slide versus using the slides for a prompt when giving a technical talk. Any tips?
Yes, handouts. So if I know engineers do this, where I've seen these, we've all seen these, where you put your entire data chart on that slide. You know they're not going to read that. You know that. Now, one thing you can do, though, you can give them handouts of that so they can see it in front of them and look through the data. One tip for that, though, is so say we have a data table, okay, and you need that as a visual cue. Fine, put that data table up. Don't put 14 data tables. Take one slide for one piece of information. Put that up there. And then in PowerPoint, you have these animation features where you can highlight certain things, right? You can highlight data points on your table. What I typically do is I use red circles. And that way, even if I have a lot of information on my screen, my viewers aren't trying to figure out where I am. I will use animations and I will highlight, I will circle. Let's talk about this piece of data. That's a prompt for me. It's also a prompt for them. Look at that part of the table. Don't look at the rest of it. And the next one, circle this and circle that. In other words, hold their hand and show them where to look. So if you have to have a lot of data on the slide, using that technique to target it is a good way to kind of strike the happy medium.
Hey, Kevin,
but wherever you can, keep the data low on your slides.
Hey, Kevin.
Hey, David.
I got an idea that somebody told me, and it actually works pretty darn well with technical information. Go back through your slide deck and try to do it just like you did, with one picture per slide, and actually take the words off.
Yeah.
And try giving your talk that way. If you got a handout, they can read the handout, but no words, all pictures. You do that a few times, you put the words back on, then slowly, that actually works pretty well.
Great tip. And you know what, by the way, you know what that'll do is it'll force you to prepare. It'll force you to get that, to over prepare. Because if you think, human nature is such that if I think I'm going to have notes or something to fall back on in my meeting, you will fall back on it. You will not prepare as hard as you would if you knew that was not there. So work without that tightrope. I encourage you to do that. Like David said, visuals, prompts, but that's where the over preparing comes in. It's scary, but I promise you'll be better. And you will get better reaction from your audience because you'll now be engaging them. You'll be looking at them instead of your notes.
What is your take on self-deprecating humor? As long as it isn't too intense or awkward, I think it honestly puts speakers at ease and creates less of a us versus audience mentality.
Great question. Okay, I want to talk about humor in general, because humor, and self-deprecating humor or any other, humor is one of the most powerful tools you have to engage your audience, right? It draws us in, it builds rapport, it connects us. Here's the thing though, and here's the tip for self-deprecating humor or any other. If you are not funny, don't try to be funny in a public speak. And at this point in your life, you know if you're funny or not. By the way, there's no shame in not being funny. That's okay, that's totally fine. You can be a great public speaker and not be funny. But if you are, we've all seen it, if you try to manufacture funny and you are not naturally so, it will be the most awkward moment in your public speaking. Don't try to be funny if you're not. If you are, absolutely. Fold it in but with this caveat, don't make this a comedy show. Remember, the entire point is to deliver the information to their brains. Use humor like seasoning, a way to deliver information. Don't make it so it distracts. My best public speaking teacher, and I'll close on this, my best public speaking teacher ever taught me this phrase: maximize the message, minimize the messenger. Maximize the message, minimize the messenger. So if you are doing anything, if you wear a tie that is so bright that when you walk out in the hallway and say, hey, what color tie did he have on? They shouldn't remember your tie. If they do, that means they were distracted looking at your loud tie. If you tell a joke that you should not tell or it was too much, they're going to remember that. So maximize the message, minimize the messenger. And I think we're about out of time. Thank you all so much for this. This was a blast. I'm learning this virtual environment. Again, this is something I'm learning as well, along with everybody else. And I really appreciate you doing this and taking the time. Donna or Regina, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you everyone for coming. Donna, are you on here?
I am.
Okay. We did video this. I'm going to actually stop recording.